Welcome to the Heavy Spoilers Show. I'm your host Definition, and this is the channel where we explain it so you don't have to. This episode we're covering DC's latest comic book extravaganza, Shazam, and breaking down everything that you need to know about the movie's ending and all the cool little Easter eggs that are in the film. Make sure you stick around until the end for my review of Shazam, where I'll be letting you know whether to go out and see it in theatres or just to wait for the Blu-ray. From here on out, it's full spoilers ahead, so if you don't want to know anything about the film, then I highly recommend that you turn off now. For everyone else, thanks for clicking the video, sit back, relax, and let's get into my ending explain breakdown of Shazam. Shazam opens with a young Dr. Sivana travelling home with his brother and father. Sivana is really looked down upon by the two, and we get the feeling that his brother is the favourite, whilst he's sort of the outcast. Things start looking up though when he's transported to the Rock of Eternity during the ride, and he meets a wizard known as Shazam. Shazam is in search for someone pure of heart to tackle the manifestations of the 7 deadly sins for when they eventually break out of their holdings in his dimension. There's a little cameo from Mr. Mind, which I'll get into more later, and it seems like Sivana is going to be the next champion until the whisperings of the sins tempt him to take their power. Due to this, Sivana is cast out, and back on the road he accidentally causes his father to crash the car they're riding in, paralysing him in the process. Eagle-eyed DC fans will recognise Sivana's father as actor John Glover, who also played Lionel Luthor in TV's Smallville. Man, that guy is amazing at raising supervillains. Anyway, flash forward to current day and we join Billy Batson, 14-year-old boy who's in search of his mother. Batson lost her during a visit to the carnival and has been moving from foster home to foster home trying to track her down to no avail. There's a nice little reference to Batman Begins and The Dark Knight Rises, with a policeman putting a blanket around the young Batson in order to comfort him after just losing his parents. It's just a shame that Commissioner Gordon wasn't on the case, because maybe he could have found his mother, as the excuse they gave that he couldn't track her down is that she just changed her maiden name, which... Anyway, Batson gets moved to a new foster home and quickly forms a friendship with the other children there, including superhero-obsessed Freddie Freeman. Freddy owns a replica Batarang, has multiple Aquaman t-shirts, and even managed to obtain a deflected bullet that was shot off Superman. Meanwhile, Dr. Sivana has spent decades looking for a way back to the Rock of Eternity so that he can prove he's worthy. After interviewing multiple people with shared experiences, Sivana figures out the symbols to create a doorway back to the realm, taking the original power that the sins tempted him with whilst they possess and inhabit his body. Left with no real choice, the wizard Shazam bestows the power of Shazam upon Billy, who with the help of Freddy slowly starts to figure out his powers. There's some absolutely hilarious scenes in here when Billy stops a store robbery and he quickly becomes a local celebrity, racking up thousands of views on YouTube. A bit like another hero that I know. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment it. Anyway, the fame sort of goes to Billy's head and he becomes more of an act than a hero, dodging his responsibility as much as possible. And we all know with great power comes... Never mind, that's the wrong hero. Because of this, he and Freddy fall out, and Freddy sort of becomes a laughingstock at school after bragging that Shazam would have lunch with him as he's his best friend, but guess what, he never shows. Sivana, aware that if Billy gains his full potential, he'll be able to defeat him, tracks him down and tries to take his power. There's an awesome floor keyboard reference to Big, which is of course a big influence on this film, but Billy takes the coward's way out during the fight and flees from it. Sivana spots Freddy, who he recognises from a new shot, and kidnaps him, which leads him to the foster home where he holds the family hostage. At this point, with the help of his foster brother and some hacker man skills, Billy tracks down his mother, but upon showing up at her door, he realises that she purposely left him at the carnival when she realised that she wouldn't be able to take care of him properly due to her only being 17 and his father being in jail. Shoutouts Barry Allen. Anyway, Billy realises he has a new family and returns to the home to take Sivana head on, who takes him to the Rock of Eternity to transfer his powers. The Foster family follow him, and after Freddy throws a Batarang off his head, they realise that he goes back to being mortal if the sins are out of him. Cue some Monsters Inc. inspired doorways and a cameo from Crocodile Man, and eventually the group return to the carnival that Billy was left at, which is where Sivana shows up to take his power once more. Shazam, realising that his power comes from the heart and that his family are that to him now, is able to transfer his power into all of his foster family and thus create the Shazam kids. Anyone who's read Flashpoint knows how badass these guys are, and I love that Adam Brody finally got to be in a DC film. For those who don't know, Brody was actually cast as the Flash in George Miller's Justice League film. However, the movie was cancelled just days before it was due to shoot, so it finally seems like justice is served. Sorry, that joke was terrible. Anyway, they defeat the Sins and Billy is able to depower Sivana and lock him up. Their fight has Man of Steel written all over it with some hilarious villain monologuing that falls on deaf ears. The family grow closer and Freddy sits down for lunch, which is when Shazam joins him, confirming that they do indeed know each other. Just to add some extra oomph to the end of the film, Shazam says he brought a friend, which is when Superman walks in and sits down beside them. Now this last shot can be taken two ways. We never actually see Henry Cavill in the suit and Superman's appearance is completely neck down. I did actually have a member of staff from Warner Brothers contact me a couple of months back after they got to see an assembly cut of the film, and they said that the Superman shot was originally supposed to be an insert whilst they work things out behind the scenes with Henry Cavill. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like they were able to come to an agreement, but I actually think the shot still works and that Warner Brothers probably managed to save a shed load of money. Cut to the credits and we get an awesome animation that shows Shazam interacting with the rest of the Justice League and kinda owning them left, right and centre. Now the first post-credit scene picks up with Dr. Sivana in his cell trying to recreate the symbols to open the door back to the Rock of Eternity. Out of nowhere, a raspy robotic voice tells him that it's useless and there are other ways to obtain magic, which is when we see Mr. Mind, who escaped the Rock of Eternity earlier, has returned. Mind is part of the Monster Society of Evil, and this is a sort of lower tier Legion of Doom made up of members like Dummy, Mr. Who and Crocodile Man. Black Adam has too been a member from time to time, and this sets up the casting of The Rock as the character for the inevitable sequel, cause let's face it, this movie's gonna kill it. Sivana eventually joins them and this meeting makes a lot of sense for the future. Personally though, I've always viewed these as kind of joke characters and they're not really headline acts for DC graphic novels, so it seems strange that Warner Brothers have decided that they should be the next foe, but obviously they bring a wealth of dynamics to the proceedings, so it seems like creators are aiming to continue the fun and friendly aesthetic of this movie. The last post-credit scene is just a gag that was shown in trailers and doesn't really tease anything for the future. The scene shows Shazam attempting to speak to his fish as Freddie Freeman watches. This is of course a little nudge and acknowledgement of Aquaman, but it's bound to disappoint those who are expecting a big cameo from one of DC's A-listers. And now onto my review. Shazam was a hell of a lot of fun. DC have been criticised recently of copying Marvel too much, but here the family-friendly vibe works a treat. The movie is hilarious from start to finish and there's a self-awareness to it that makes it really easy to get into. Casting is pitch perfect here, with Jack Dillon, who plays Freddie Freeman, really being the runaway star for me. He adds a wealth of humour to the performance, but also heart when necessary. Zachary Levi is about to become a household name, and I promise in a couple of months I'll be able to pronounce his name properly, because he feels like he embodies a kid that's been bestowed with these powers. Whilst I do think the third act goes on a bit too long with a Ferris wheel scene that was completely unnecessary, ultimately this is another step forward for DC, who've been nailing it recently. This is the best Captain Marvel movie of the year, and you should definitely go and check this out in theatres, as it's gonna be a big one. Okay, and lastly, how would I rank the entire DCU lineup from best to worst? Now, I'm not going to include the Dark Knight trilogy in this list as it's unfair on the rest of the films, and this is strictly from Man of Steel onwards. So, my ranking after seeing Shazam would go Man of Steel at number 1. I know this is a controversial pick, but I think the film perfectly showcases what our world would be like if a superhero entered it, and that fight at the end, whilst a little long-winded, set the stage for a lot of superhero movies going forward. Next is Shazam. Again, a brilliant superhero movie that feels quite grounded in scenarios that I, and I'm guessing a lot of teenagers, will be able to relate to. After that is the extended cut, and I have to stress extended cut, of Batman v Superman. Whilst I do think this will probably rub people the wrong way being so high up on the list, I do really enjoy the film and it has the best Batman fight scene ever put to a movie. Next up is Wonder Woman, which is a brilliant movie that knocked it out the park for the most part. I just feel like it suffers from the origin story problems that most first outings do, and its last act is where the movie falls apart. Then it would be Aquaman. Whilst I really enjoyed the movie, that Pitbull song made me die a little inside. Then it's Justice League. That movie is just a mess to me, and Cavill's mustache ruins the entire thing. I'll never forgive you, Tom Cruise. And last but not least, well, it is least, is Academy Award winner Suicide Squad. Look, you know the movie's bad when the sequel is a reboot, so yeah, let's not get into it. Okay, so that's pretty good for Shazam, right? It ranks pretty high, and I'm looking forward to watching it again. Obviously, I'd love to hear your thoughts on the film and where you rank it amongst the rest of the DC universe. Comment below and let me know, and if you enjoyed this video, then make sure you check out my full breakdown of last week's big movie, Us, which will be linked at the end. I also do a comic book movie podcast called Watching the Watchmen for hardcore DC fans who want a bit more long form analysis of their favourite books, which I'll leave a link to after this video. This is a channel for people who are super into superheroes, so if that's the kind of thing you like, hit subscribe. Thanks again for taking the time to watch this. I've been Definition, you've been the best, and I'll see you next time. Take care, peace.